Hello and welcome to this week's Geek TV. Joining me to dive headfirst into the world of Doctor Who is Digital Spy's TV editor, Morgan Jeffrey. Say hello, Morgan.
Hello.
If you're anything like us, you'll have just finished watching the final episode of Death in Heaven. Morgan, where to begin? Wow, what an episode. Let's start with the Master slash Missy. Did you think Michelle Gomez brought the iconic character back to life?
I a little bit miss the original sort of take on the Master, where when Roger Delgado first played him back in the 70s and he was more kind of suave and kind of urbane and quite cool. I really like that Master. More recently, especially with, starting with maybe the John Sim Master, they've gone for this more kind of crazed, madcap version of the character. And if that's what you're going for, I thought Michelle Gomez did a really good job. It's maybe not the version of the character that I, kind of favour, but I thought she did a great job at playing this character who is absolutely bananas, as they say in the episode.
Obviously there is a different history to him, as obviously the various different actors have played him, but that seems to be where, at least currently, the Master is characterised as a sort of almost camp, crazy villain.
Yeah, I think the concern with the Master was that, he is... You look at a picture of Roger Delgado and he looks like what you imagine a supervillain to look like. He's all in black with an evil goatee. And I guess that kind of character is a little bit cliche and a little bit cartoonish, and it's like, well, this character, you don't buy this character, really. So the only way you can excuse this character coming up with all these ridiculous, convoluted plots and not just shooting the Doctor dead is, he, or now she, is just absolutely crazy. And that's the way they've gone.
Do you think it was intentional, the Mary Poppins thing? There was a bit where she almost floated in an umbrella in the graveyard.
Yeah,
which I thought was a bit bizarre.
Yeah, the whole Mary Poppins, Scary Poppins. I think that's what some fans were terming Missy before the whole Master reveal. I didn't think they were playing up to it specifically until that moment you mentioned where she glides down, and it was like, well, that's obviously what they're going for.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about Stephen Moffat, that his idea of ultimate evil is Mary Poppins. Yeah. maybe that film kind of unsettled him a little as a kid, I don't know.
I guess the disappointing thing was the ending for the Master.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's Doctor Who, so nothing, is permanently ended, but it felt a bit
rushed.
Flat, zap. The Master's gone.
Yeah.
It felt a bit weird that it didn't leave something sort of hanging, if you know what I mean.
The episode was, even at an hour long, it was really jam-packed. You had a whole army of Cybermen, and you had Clara and Danny and all of that to resolve, and I just think the Master got pushed aside a little bit, which is weird given that Dark Water ends with this big, huge reveal, and then weirdly the Master, for my tastes, doesn't have enough to do in this episode. So I really hope that Michelle Gomez does get another shot at it, because I don't feel like the character was featured as heavily as she deserves.
A lot of the Master stuff seemed to have been all the stuff behind the scenes, like all the setup between bringing Clara and the Doctor together.
Yeah.
That felt like something that should have been the Master, but because there wasn't much actual finished product, that could have just been the Great Intelligence, or some other villain.
Exactly. There's nothing about it that particularly screams it's the Master, and even like the final plot, that could have just been the Cybermen by themselves.
Yeah.
And I feel like that would have been a strong enough finale. And I like the characters of the Master, so I'm glad they put them back in there. But I just feel like it felt like a little bit of a token addition, and they threw her in there at the end of Dark Water, and then didn't really know what to do with her, and she just went around killing a couple of people, and then, as you say, it came to a bit of a limp climax.
Yeah, the Cybermen were great though.
Yes.
As a sort of new fan, I haven't seen any of the sort of classic Cyberman episodes when they're crawling out of the gravestones and stuff like that. I thought it was brilliant.
Well, yeah, the Cybermen are actually my favourite monsters. I prefer them to the Daleks. But having said that, I think they're very difficult to write well, because it's very easy to just write them as robots, and that's kind of dull. But in their very early appearances in the 60s, they were a little less mechanical. There was some more human elements to them, and they felt more like kind of mechanized zombies. And I always liked that idea. They weren't just these big stomping robots. They were kind of basically zombies. And Death in Heaven really comes back to that notion where it's kind of like just a sci-fi twist on a zombie movie where literally the Cybermen are crawling out of graves. Yeah. It's stuff very reminiscent of the classic zombie genre. So I absolutely love that twist. I thought they were handled really well here.
What did you think about the Danny Pink and Clara storyline? Danny Pink, it's fair to say, he's been a little bit divisive.
Yeah.
And, some fans maybe a little less than keen. There's quite a few amusing forum threads on the Digital Spy forums about him. I don't think anything particularly about the actor. I mean, more just the characters just felt a little bit flat.
Yeah.
Did you shed a tear over their emotional farewell?
Do you know what? I did find it quite moving. I think
You cried.
I did. I didn't cry. We'll get onto that in a minute. But no, I thought, because Jenna Coleman's great. So particularly in that final scene where she had the sonic screwdriver and she kind of had to, turn off his humanity. I did find that moving, mainly because the performances were so strong. I always have this problem. There's this notion that's cropped up a couple of times in Doctor Who of, love is the one thing that can defeat the Cybermen. There was the previous episode with James Corden where they were beaten by the pure energy of love, and I just find that a bit naff. That was kind of the thing here where he loves Clara so much that he was able to subvert his programming.
Yeah.
Why can't all Cybermen do that? They must all have love. I just felt that's a little bit corny and a little bit twee. But I bought it because of the strength of the performances, I think.
The thing that I thought was that we didn't necessarily see enough of Danny Pink throughout the whole series. I think I've mentioned it before on Geek TV that, Jenna Coleman's performance was brilliant, and that sort of emotionally I felt that in the final episode, her loss at someone, but I didn't feel it from the Danny Pink perspective.
Yeah.
And as Jenna's still here and Danny Pink is gone, I think I should have felt more for him than her.
Yeah. Well, his death last week was very, very quick, wasn't it? Very rushed. It was basically dealt with in the opening few minutes. It was almost told in montage. So I don't think you ever really felt the power of his death. And I think it's partly because of that, and partly because of what you said, that maybe he wasn't significant enough in the series. Clara kept saying how important she was to him, but I don't think we as viewers felt that he was that important. I don't think we took him to our hearts maybe as much as she did.
He was important to her, but not for us.
Yeah. And that's not even that's not a slight on the character. That's not saying I didn't like the character.
Yeah.
I don't think I grew as attached to him as perhaps we were meant to, and clearly as much as the character of Clara was. And also I think the very final beat with Danny, presuming he doesn't come back, I felt like that missed the mark a little bit, this whole idea that he redeemed himself for killing this kid as a soldier by bringing the kid back to life. Just because that whole subplot was never really given the right amount of breathing room. It never really went anywhere, the whole idea that he was guilt-stricken over this killing. And then the way the kid came back was just barely explained. It was just a bit of nonsense tagged on at the end there. So I felt like that was a bit of a bum note.
Something that was probably a nicer touch was the nod to the Brigadier.
Yes.
I mean, it was nice to obviously have, first of all, had his portrait up in the plane, and I thought that was just a nice little nod.
Yeah.
But then he came and saved the day, the Brigadier as a Cyberman. I think you said that maybe it could have been seen in bad taste.
Yeah, well, this is my thing with, that sequence is actually a sequence that, came closest to making me cry. Because it's got the weight of the fact that obviously the actor who played the Brigadier, Nick Courtney, he's no longer with us, so there's that whole thing behind it. And so I did find it very moving. If you look at it too closely, it's a little bit odd that the Brigadier's corpse is now, been transformed into a Cyberman and is just flying about space. Yeah. It's a little bit weird. But again...
Don't think too much.
Don't look into it too much. Again, with the whole Clara Downey thing, it's the same thing. The performances sold it for me. So it's a little weird if you think about it too much, but the power of Capaldi doing that salute at last, that did really move me. And the show's paid tribute to Nick Courtney before, since he died, but he was a huge asset to Doctor Who and a really important part of the show's history. So I'm more than happy for the show to literally throw in one last salute.
Capaldi probably enjoyed that as a fan.
As a fan himself. Yeah, he appreciates the weight behind it too, which I think really added to his performance. Yeah.
I guess the conclusion of this episode, leading us, I guess, into the next series, probably not the Christmas special, as they tend to be quite standalone. But the next series, next year in 2015, I guess the thing that it's building up to is the return to Gallifrey, or is it?
I'm not so sure, because technically the return of Gallifrey has been a thing since the 50th. Yeah. Since that's special, and the Doctor was on the search for Gallifrey, but it wasn't really a driving force. He continued to just have adventures, and occasionally Gallifrey would be mentioned. And I think every so often it's going to crop up, as it did here. They'll be like, "Have I found Gallifrey?" No, I haven't. And maybe eventually he will. Yeah. But I don't think it's going to be this. As it hasn't been previously, I don't think next series it's going to be this whole, episode by episode arc. I think every so often it will come up, and then maybe eventually he'll find it. But it's not going to be week in, week out.
More likely to be towards the end, I guess. Yeah, maybe Capaldi's journey as the Doctor.
Yeah, perhaps, or maybe it's something they'll throw in, in series finales and that kind of thing. It's a big thing to throw in there. So I think it's something they're only going to throw in there when they really want to make an impact.
And would you like, potentially, a long series involving a return to Gallifrey? Or does it not interest you?
Well, the thing with Gallifrey is it's actually quite boring.
How dare you?
Crucially, what's at the crux of Doctor Who is the idea that he ran away from Gallifrey to travel in time and space because Gallifrey was boring. He wants to go back there only because it was taken away from him. It's like if the Doctor there's this whole talk in this episode of maybe he'll go back to Gallifrey and rule. That's the last thing he actually wants to do. Yeah. So, once he got back to Gallifrey, what would he do? He'd just go, yep, that's fine, and then pop off again. There's no substance to sticking around on Gallifrey. Yeah. The whole show is about him travelling in time and space and going on adventures. So I think it's almost better as kind of just an idea.
What do you think this episode means for the future of Clara and Jenna Coleman's character? We're all presuming she's leaving in the Christmas special. Yeah. But this episode didn't really do much to suggest that she's leaving particularly. I thought it kind of left it quite nicely for them to be
ways.
They parted ways, but I thought it parted ways in a way that would mean they get thrown back together again.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, it's kind of this episode ends on a kind of slightly tragic note where they're these best friends, but they both lie to each other. She lies about Danny, he lies about Gallifrey, and they sort of part ways with a lot unspoken. And I think Christmas will maybe explore that. It'll explore, these two finally opening up to each other and telling each other the truth. And it seems like they're going to part again, but I think they'll part on slightly happier terms come Christmas.
So the Christmas special, what do we know about the episode? Because obviously that has got to make, if Jenna Coleman's leaving, and B, them sort of telling the truth to each other, that's going to be a large part of it, but there's obviously going to be another general adventure going on at the same time.
Well, another reason I'm predicting a slightly happier ending for Clara and the Doctor is because it's at Christmas, and you can't be too dark, although I always like it when the Doctor Who Christmas specials have a bit of substance to them, because a lot of the times when it doesn't have, say, a regeneration or a companion leaving or a new Doctor, they can just be a bit of fluff. I think I've said this before. It's just robots, snowmen, and snow, and
sounds brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a bit flimsy and a bit I like it when they do have something else in there aside from just the trappings of Christmas. And so if Jenna's leaving, if you have the Doctor dealing with all of that and the end of their relationship, it's going to have some dramatic heft to it and not just the usual sort of fun and frolics.
And who's starring in it?
I'm going to have to be careful what I say because I have actually been on set for the Christmas special.
Come on, you have to be careful.
I know,
it's only the BBC.
I know slightly more than I should, but there's...
Nick Frost.
Nick Frost is in it, and he's possibly, rumour has it, he's playing a very iconic sort of Christmas figure, keeping that vague as I can. And then, don't think about it too much. And then
a reindeer.
And then you've got a couple of other guest stars in there. There's Nathan McMullen, who was in Misfits, Faye Marseille, who was in Fresh Meat and recently in Glue as well. And we don't know a lot about the plot at the moment. Literally, pretty much all we do know is the cast and that it presumably will air on Christmas Day.
I'm afraid that's all we've got from this series of Geek TV. We will be back at Christmas, probably on Christmas Day after the Doctor Who episode. We'll have recorded it before, so don't worry. We'll see you then. See you at Christmas.